Good morning and welcome to today's music history moment. We're taking a departure momentarily. If you recall, we were in the middle of learning about Johann Sebastian Bach. Today we're going to learn about dance music. So this is a pause. So I hope you enjoy this today. We got the fire here and it's kind of warm, but I'm all right. So this is called Shall We Dance? Dancing and music have existed together pretty much from the start. It's a bit of a chicken and an egg question as to which came first, dancing or music. The earliest dances were likely some sort of fertility rites and were the human equivalent of animal mating dances. Dances also came to be associated with other major events in the life cycle, including death, the so-called danse macabre. In the Middle Ages, dancing became more formalized. Bureaucracy has started to take over, doesn't it always? Different types of dances were developed, each with its own style of rhythm and movement. The form of these dances began to influence both music and literature. It's no coincidence that we speak of poetry having feet. In the Renaissance, dances became separated into two general categories: the stiff, formal, dignified dancing of the aristocracy and upper classes, and the livelier, more entertaining dances of the peasants and lower classes, which were generally much more fun. Queen Elizabeth I of England scandalized her court by dancing a volta, a particularly vigorous dance with a lot of leaps and turns. People thought it wasn't dignified, but that's what she liked about being queen. She could do whatever she wanted. Among the earliest dance forms were the broncal or the bronsel, and the estampi or the estampida, which got its name because it involves stomping on the ground. Another is the bassa dance, which means low dance. Scholars are still arguing over whether that means low because it came from the peasants or low because you dance it without lifting your feet very high. If they ever make up their minds, I'll let you know. The bassa dance is a slowish dance in duple as opposed to triple time. It was later replaced by the pavane, a similarly slow and stately dance. Pavanes were danced by the aristocrats. They thought it made them look important. One of the most famous treatises on early dance is Orchestrostrophy, written by Johann Tuberow and published in 1588. He wrote it under the pen name Thoinot Arbo, probably because he was a priest and the church didn't approve of dancing. Like many theoretical treatises of that time, it's written in the form of a dialogue between the teacher, Arbo, and his particularly dim-witted pupil, Capriole. Let the noble gentleman dance it with sword and beret, Arbo says, describing the pavane. The ladies show a modest demeanor, lower their eyes, and only go from time to glance up at the audience with maidenly coyness. The pavane was often followed by another popular dance of the time, the galliard. The name may come from Gallius, a type of French apple, but the scholars are still arguing over that one too. The galliard was a much livelier dance with a lot of high stepping. Arbo says you should lift your leg as if you're about to kick someone. Because it involved a pattern of 5 steps, it was sometimes known in Italian as Cinquino Passi and is French as Quinicu Pas. The English never got a good translating from other language, called it syncopes. I can say that one. As often happens, music meant for dancing also worked its way into other performing situations, combining musical influences from a variety of countries. Renaissance composers often wrote dance-like music, such as sets of pavanes and galliards. That may have been meant only for listening to, not dancing. In the Renaissance or Baroque, dance pieces were grouped together into suites, which formed the basis for the sonata and later the symphony. These instrumental suites might include such dances as the French courant, the German allemande, the Spanish sarabande, or the Italian saltarello. The bourrée, a French dance, gets its name from the word for flapping wings. Early Baroque dancing, or ballet, from the Latin word ballare, means to dance, was generally not treated as a separate art form, but was usually incorporated as part of some large performance, first in allegorical spectacles and later as part of an opera. The aristocrats loved big, fancy productions because it gave them a chance to dress up in funny costumes. When Ferdinand III of Austria married the Spanish princess Maria Ana in Vienna in 1631, for instance, there was a big ballet production in which Archduchess Claudia dressed up as the moon and other ladies of the court dressing up as the planets. They had a grand old time. A little later, in 1667, when Leopold I married another Spanish princess, Margarita, there was a special performance of Cesti's opera Pomo d'Oro, The Golden Apple, with lots of dancing beforehand. The opera libretto is based on the famous Greek myth about Paris giving a golden apple to Venus, the goddess of love, who then helped him win the heart of Helen of Troy, thereby starting the Trojan War. Cesti, no fool when it came to sucking up to his royal patron, altered the plot for the occasion, having the actor playing Paris give the golden apple to Margarita instead. It was in the 17th century that French ballet started to become an important force in its own right, but still it was regarded as an entertainment than an art form. Along about 1645, there was a performance for the future King Louis VIII of France of La Finta Pazza, a ballet of the Venetian composer Francesco Sacrati. In addition to the costume dancers, the orchestra dressed up in animal skins, and there were clowns doing tricks and pratfalls. Louis thought it was marvelous. Of course, he was about 6 years old at the time. When Louis VIII got married in 1660 to yet another Spanish princess, Maria Theresa, there was a special performance of Cavallari's Spanish opera Serse, for which a young Italian musician named Giovanni Battista Lulli wrote a special ballet music. Writing music for the king's wedding was a step up for Lulli, who'd started out in the kitchen as a busboy. The king was impressed by Lulli, who soon changed his name to the French version, Jean-Baptiste Lulli. He joined the court orchestra, Les 24 Violins du Roi, the 24 violins of the king, and soon became its leader. Lulli got himself appointed court composer and, after a fight with the 24 violins, formed another group, Les 16 Petits Violinos, or the 16 Little Violins. In addition to his talents as a composer and player, Lulli was, by all accounts, an accomplished dancer who often performed his own ballets. Sometimes the king joined in too, just to show he was a good sport, but usually he played the part of a king or a god just to show that he was still in charge. Under Lulli, ballet became an important part of French theater and was almost always included in any performance of opera, a tradition that lasted well into the 19th century. Lulli's influence on French music came to a sudden end in 1687 after he bashed his toe with a big staff, which in those days was pounded on the floor to beat time for the music. Lulli's stubbed toe developed gangrene, which led to blood poisoning and eventually his death. I suppose it's appropriate, if ironic, that the composer who first popularized ballet should die of a foot injury. Important ballet composers after Lulli included Rameau and Gluck, whose ballet version of Don Juan was performed in 1761. The young Mozart wrote one ballet, Les Petites Reines, in 1778, hoping it would get him some more work. It didn't. Maybe it was the title, calling it The Little Nothings, surely didn't inspire confidence. Beethoven, being too busy revolutionizing the symphonic form, found time only to write one ballet, The Creatures of Prometheus, in 1800 or so. Even Wagner had to swallow his pride and bow to the French predilection for the dance, inserting a specially composed ballet into his opera Tannhauser for a performance in Paris in 1860. But Wagner blew it. Not wanting to tamper much with his opera, he put the ballet near the very beginning. This enraged the Parisian high society set, who liked to arrive at the opera house fashionably late, in time for the ballet in the second act. The ensuing riots closed the production for only 3 performances. After only 3 performances. Ballet really came into its own in the 19th century with works such as Adolphe, Adam's Giselle, and Coppelia by Lilo de Blies, Delibes, paving the way for ballets of Tchaikovsky, who came later. That, my friends, is as far as we get today in our story of dance. It won't be long before we hear the rest, but we hope in the meantime you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week for the last week of school before break. See you later, everybody. Have a great day.